What is up, everybody? Justin Millette, your host with the Real Alaska podcast, and my co-host,
Tyler Bogert. How's everybody doing?
And we are here with Kassandra Taggart.
Yo.
Hello.
Yo. And what's your company?
Real Property Management. We do commercial and residential rentals all over Valley to Homer.
Oh, wow.
That's a big spread.
It is.
Yeah.
Not small anymore.
I know.
Gotta keep going.
Well, that's the whole point of business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of grow it up a little bit.
Yep.
Expansion.
So obviously I wanted to get on here, and thanks for coming on the show. I know you like to do these, and you guys have your own podcast as well. And what's the name of that podcast?
So the podcast is more up underneath the Landlords Club. So it's the Landlords Almanac, where we have landlord conversations, and we talk about questions that landlords have, and we debate them and the pros and cons of every decision that they make. And it comes from the forum. So there's over 2,000 landlords hanging out on the forum.
That's awesome.
And they'll post questions, and I'll answer them on the show.
That's pretty rad.
Is that 2000 in Alaska? That's just Alaska. Okay. Alaska 2000.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's awesome. So we'll obviously put a link to you guys' podcast in our description, so people can access that. And obviously, they have more specific questions to landlording stuff.
That's the place to go for the details. That's for sure.
Yeah, because we can only cover so much in like 40 minutes.
Right.
So
We'd be here all day if we got into
Oh
it.
gosh, weeks,
yeah.
maybe a year.
Yeah.
at least.
I need more water, Mike.
Uber Eats. But so obviously wanted you get on here, talk about the current rental market, what you're seeing in property management, because obviously on the buy and sell side, it's been kind of bananas.
Yeah, bananas is a good word for both sides.
Yeah.
So we have some common ground here.
Yeah. The root of all the problems is inventory,
Right.
And that's the same problem on our side. Yeah.
So is it just lack of inventory for renters?
So something that we do at our company is we rate on the residential side, meaning people live in the property, residential. Right. We rate the properties ABC, so that way we can class them and understand what's happening in that class.
Right.
Whether is that coming in, growing, small, large, rents going up, rents going down, all that kind of stuff. And we measure things by rent per square foot, not that's 1,200.
Right.
Put finger in the air and go, yep, 1,200. Right.
Right.
So what we're finding as far as inventory goes is that properties, if the landlord was willing to sell them, then it sold. If they couldn't sell because they were underwater, they'd put it into the rental market. But because there was more of them, that market actually dropped significantly on the price between 2015 to today, 2022.
Interesting.
The B market, though, because a lot of the people in the A market, when the BP changed and Sam's Club changed, all that stuff, when that changed, all the people that normally lived in A moved to the middle market.
Okay.
Which changed the inventory.
Right.
All the C's now had job opportunities because things shifted. They went into the B. So B is tight, very, very tight. So from 2015 to about 2019, rents did kind of go a little soft. Then all of a sudden it went up and up and up and up, and I can't find any B properties to rent.
Right.
In my inventory, all my Bs have been rented for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I'm giving them rent increases, and they're signing and handing it back over, saying thanks for not kicking me out.
Oh,
Right.
Wow.
And then in the C properties, they're having a different dilemma. They're in a world where a lot of the people were impacted by COVID were in those properties. And so they have a lot of delayed maintenance. They have a lot of delayed ability for tenants to pay rent, compounding effect for the landlord as well.
Right.
And it's just making this sub-market of consequences of just bad decision after bad decision. So there's quite a few of them that are down for maintenance and hasn't come back. There's quite a few that are below market because they're just hoping someone will pay $1.
Right.
There's a lot still available. Part of the problem is they can't find tenants that are willing to pay rent to qualify to actually move in.
Right.
So because majority of the tenants that are moving and being shuffled are wanting mid-market. They're not wanting the outskirts.
Right.
So it's just creating this inventory problem. And then when the sales market really kicked off, all the townhomes went and sold, all the mid-sized condos sold, all the duplexes sold to owner-occupied, which used to not be owner-occupied. Right. And that shrunk the inventory. So that's making the middle market go up and up and up. And we're talking just in the last 24 months, most of the B properties are anywhere from $150 to $500 increases on rent.
That's a pretty significant yearly bump for rental income. Yeah.
Big bumps. Yeah. Big bumps. We have a house, just talking Palmer, for example, Palmer and Wasilla, they're short too, even more so than Anchorage. Right. And we had a house that went up for, it was just a standard 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage kind of house, but it was next to the high school. And it rented before. We've had this property for years. It was $1,800, then $2,000, then $2,000, and then COVID happened, shortage happened, inventory issues happened. We kicked the tenant out because they were not doing so good, and we went all the way up to $2,800.
Holy smokes!
And it's occupied at $2,800.
Yep.
Man, holy cow!
So, for those who may not know the classifications of properties, like what is give them a good idea.
ABC, like just kind of outline,
A properties tend to be houses. They tend to be upper-end houses with fine finishes, like nice textured doors and perfect trim, perfect paint, 2-color paint, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. They tend to rent to the $1,800 and higher in rent, but it doesn't mean that a condo can't be an A property, because sometimes you can get some of the Fox Ridge properties, and those rent like A properties. Then you've got the mid-market, which mid-market tends to be that $1,350 to $1,800. It's the townhomes, the intros, the what my husband likes to call it is the ladder rack communities. Is where when you drive through the place, you see everybody with ladder racks, the electrician, the tradesman. All that's that market. Okay. Then the C tends to be the $1,200 and under. Doesn't mean condos are down there. Condos sometimes walk the line because of they do compete with apartments in a lot of ways. Right. But C is $1,200 and under. They tend to be literally a square box with a square box, and you go in through a square hallway to a square box. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's kind of what a C property tends to be.
Yeah. Okay. So that's understandable. So you're probably nicer. Your fourplexes, your duplexes, triplexes are going to be Bs then?
Some of them are C pluses. Some of them are B minuses.
Now we're adding pluses.
Because they're on the edges, And because you can have a fourplex be on the edge because it has washer and dryer in each unit, or it has a carport. So it's walking the edge of a condo. Right. And so when you start grouping them, and then you start breaking down their dollar per square foot, then you can start figuring out what the actual rent is going to be and be able to rent those things within hours and be able to do lease renewals within hours because you know where the market is at every moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's understandable. Man, I know we have a lot of questions.
Go for it. I know everything, anything landlording.
He looks at me because he knows I'm about to just fire off.
I know. Fire away,
See,
Tyler.
I've been a landlord since I was 18, so I've got 20-something, I don't know. If I say the number, you guys will guess my age at that point. But 20-plus years, so anything you want to ask me, I'm the guru of landlording. That's my thing.
Yeah. So,
there's nothing I can't answer. Unless you go down taxes.
Right.
Let me get my book out. So yeah, just that kind of talking about that fine line between a C and a B, it really just like you can't just specifically be like a duplex is a B property.
No.
Even a fourplex, like it breaks it down by, like you said, the carports and the if it has a common area for washer and dryer, or if it's in the units. Like there's so much more to rentals than I've been a landlord for 3 years now, and I'm like blown away. Like right now I'm just like rethinking my whole life over here. So there's definitely things that I'm like, that makes sense now that I hear it. Like, okay, well, yeah, that's why people are having these duplexes that are going for like $1,800. You're like, how does that? But the one down the road is $1,200.
Yeah. I've seen duplexes be all the way up to like the one downtown. It's $1 million, couple $1 million place, right? I've seen that go, and that's a duplex, right? And then I've seen duplexes mid-market, and I've seen duplexes all the way down to the C market.
Right.
Condition, amenities, types of tenants that you're going to be able to attract. The price range is going to change. How you do repairs are going to change, because how you repair something that's a C property is much different than an A property. Like you put a hole in an A property, you better sit there and spend hours feathering it, making perfect hole, the patch, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas on a C, throw some paint up there, everybody will know there's a hole there, but keep going.
Right.
It's completely different maintenance too.
So if a landlord has a property that was, let's just say, purchase price was really cheap, and they want to get top dollar for it, let's say to make it from a C to a B, like, it really just comes down to putting in a little bit of sweat equity and finishing some things and making it, nice to bring it up to the B where you can do those rent bumps.
It's completely possible to take a property from B to a C or B to an A. It's completely possible. But you have to balance it with a couple factors. You have to balance it with, okay, if I spend $50,000 bringing it up to a B, is the rent going to support it? Is the value going to support it? Can I refinance it to get my cash back? You have to think about the whole picture, but it is possible.
Right.
The biggest deal killer when I see people do that is they go and try to make something in a particular part of town, try to go from a C to a B when everyone on the street is like a D or an F.
Right.
You can't fix location. You can't fix awkward layouts. You can't really fix being on a street of bad.
Yeah.
So you have to remember you got to work with your area or you'll lose a lot of money.
Right.
It's, and obviously looking all across Anchorage and finding different rental markets. I mean, there's so many micro markets in Anchorage, right? Like obviously Mountain View and Bootleggers are two completely separate markets, right? And the rents are going to be totally different.
And that's 5 miles away.
Yeah. I mean, it's all in Anchorage, right?
Yeah.
And so, man, I almost lost my train of thought. I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But what we were talking about earlier was like before we got on, was as we're selling things, we're seeing, because of the market is short for just everything, inventory, especially multifamily. We have quite a few buyers who want multifamily, specifically duplexes, because they do want to own or occupy. They don't want 4 units because they don't want to be a large landlord. They don't mind controlling 1 unit because that's easy, but and then of course want to do FHA at 3.5% or something like that, right?
Can't have your cake and eat it too.
I know.
And all
Exactly.
that stuff. You have to find some balance.
Yeah, the hard part is because everything is so expensive is finding stuff that pencils.
It's hard to pencil in Alaska.
Yes.
And there's multiple reasons for it. Cost of living's going up, inventory shortage, cost of permits, the cost of build, everything, it makes it hard. Alaska is one of those places where I never said this is a place to cash flow. This is a place to do jumps, is what I call it. We all know that you buy properties for one of 4 reasons or 2 of the 4 reasons, right? Which is appreciation, equity, cash flow, or taxes.
Right.
So a lot of the business owners are buying stuff, anything that's available they're buying because they get a huge tax break, which is game changer with high income earners.
Right.
And people that are new intros trying to squeak in, their budgets are going to be low, meaning they're going to accidentally go into C properties, which you have to be an expert to play there, or you'll lose your socks and everything with it, right?
Right.
But Alaska is just one of those places where appreciation equity is where you play. So you can take a property, clean it up, make it operationally perfect, and then sell it, and then you'll have like $200K to plop into the next thing, and now you got your dream house.
Right.
That's how you play the game. You're not trying to be a flipper because you can make mistakes on flipper that'll hurt you like crazy because the cities are not nice to flippers.
Right.
But trying to say, oh, I'm going to go live in this fourplex with 0 down and cash flow, those days are kind of gone and have been for a while. I know everybody wants to say those words. I get it.
Right.
But the truth is you have to put some money down. You have to invest. You have to work it. You can't just sit back and be this big investor like I don't know, the billionaires of the world like Kiyosaki and Trumps and all those guys, right?
Right.
They all still had to do down payments and work it up until they got big buildings that actually started producing accordingly. It's a business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of the key point that you just said is there's an initial investment. If you want to make money, you're going to have to come with some money to make it work. Like if they're long-term rentals, like you are thinking a long-term hold. So you're going to have to initially invest some money to get that cash flow and build up.
Yep. It's a balancing act. And I like to always bring conversations back down to what's the goal? What's the mission? Right? And I know everyone in the world says, what's your goal? What's your mission? That's what you're supposed to do. Check a box.
Right.
No, we got to be really intuitive with that concept, because if you say, well, I just want to have a duplex because someone said it's a great idea to have a duplex. Okay, there's 5 million different types of duplex. Yeah. Have you researched the loans that are available for it? Have you researched what kind of duplex? Have you looked at a particular area? No, that's the area you need to be in. And can you be patient enough to hold that cash long enough until you get the duplex to close on it and have your finances all set up accordingly for that deal?
Discipline.
Right.
Yeah.
Discipline. So much discipline.
It's all discipline. Like some of my deals would take 8 months to a year before I found the perfect one, before I moved on it.
Right.
And when I did move on it, I made several hundred each one.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was patient.
Yeah.
And the market, for some reason, I don't know if it's just the generations right now that are coming through. Everyone wants instant gratification. They want to jump in real quick. They want to just, today I woke up to have a rental. Tomorrow I'll have a rental. I'll be closing in 30 days. Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It is a huge financial commitment, and you have to commit time, energy, research, education. It's not overnight.
Yeah. And, if someone's a brand new landlord, there is a massive learning curve to that.
Massive.
Yeah. I mean, it's a ton to take in, because now you own a business. You have a ton of tax implications. You have to manage people.
Yep.
A rental.
Yep.
Do all those repairs.
Not to mention the laws. You have federal, state, local.
You have landlord-tenant laws.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot going into it.
I've since I got in real estate, you get a lot of people that call you about landlord-tenant laws, and it's amazing on just the ideas of landlord-tenant laws and what's acceptable on the landlord end. This is like a encompassing cloud of bullshit.
Yeah. I've always been impressed. I'm like, you came up with that out of what part of the rules?
I know.
And a lot of people think that the Landlord-Tenant Act is the only rule. It's not. Like if you're doing credit checks, you know that the Credit Reporting Act that the mortgage companies have to follow, we have to follow all those rules too.
Yep.
Like this isn't just one set of rules. Like fair housing, for example. We all hear fair housing. There's federal fair housing, state fair housing, and then the interpretation of fair housing.
Right.
And you're tried by government. You're not tried by court and trials, and you're not going to get insurance protection for that. One violation on fair housing is upward to $75,000 in fine by government. Okay.
Yep.
Then on top of that, there's free legal services here that have to make cases to be in business. The lawyers do. So they're making cases on fair housing violations, going after landlords in this town for violating the Fair Housing Act.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those guys are ruthless. I've got one landlord in the club right now that's upwards. They joined several people going after this one landlord, and there's no insurance for it. There's no insurance for when you're getting hit with those things.
Right.
And she said she's looking at somewhere around $600,000 in legal just to defend.
Jeez.
So she's bankrupt.
So for those new investors that think they want to be investors, that want to put a little to no money down, that's definitely something to really...
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. We all have to start somewhere. I'm not saying don't start. What I'm saying is learn before you start.
Be patient. Do your due diligence before you even jump into something.
Right. And that's why you have your Landlord Almanac podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So educate yourself before jumping into the mix, right? Because especially in this world, everybody's so happy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes,
and there are free legal services for tenants, and so that kind of creates an issue for things. So obviously, like I said, do your research and you'll be fine. Just don't, it's black and white. Landlord-tenant law is pretty black and white.
It pretty much is. There's two parts to the the Alaska Landlord Act here in Alaska. You have the pamphlet and then you have the law.
Right.
The pamphlet is a good way to kind of make sure you understand most of the intentions, but it's not the law.
Right.
So there's a lot of situations that come about and everyone's like, but the pamphlet said this. That's the intent. It's not case law. It's not actually how the judges are going to render their decision.
Right.
So be very careful when it comes to it. But when you want to play in the rental world, have a team.
Right.
You need to have a team. You need a really good mortgage person that really understands the dynamics of consequences of having the first loan set up wrong where you can't do the next rental. That's an issue. Mm-hmm. But it kind of goes back to the goals. If you don't have solid goals and a team put together that can prove that they can get you through those steps of the goals, not today's goals, tomorrow's goals, the next 10 years goal. Because rentals are a 30-year hold kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, typically a longer hold to recoup, appreciation and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, one thing that we have been seeing on our end is because of just the quick rise in rental rates is, obviously seeing multifamily properties for sale, mm-hmm. and then just, landlords have not increased in 2, 3, 4 years, right? And so you're trying to evaluate with current rents, and then of course what they have on that they're taking in, right?
And that's very hard to do because rentals isn't sitting like on an MLS where you can pull a rent roll and say, oh, this is what potential rents mm-hmm. are. Right. It's really hard, especially if it's a project that needs stages before they can get to peak rent, where you have to cycle certain units and move all these adjustments till you finally get there. It's hard to figure out the numbers.
Yeah. And so, obviously putting a cost per door to get them to like a higher market rate mm-hmm. rent and all that, obviously that's going to be a challenge. So kind of that falls into that, hey, find a good team of people mm-hmm. to help guide you, especially if you're newer into this. Obviously, if you have a lot of investment background and history, you're probably going to understand a good majority of this.
And that's a thing when appraisal companies even call us, because we have appraisal companies that call us on our cell phones because they call everyone trying to find our cell phones to get us to answer.
Right.
Because they can't get their hands on the data either to know what is the rental market doing, what can I potentially do with these leases. And so I'm having to produce CMAs for mortgage appraisers in order for comps to come in, in order to qualify on a property mm-hmm. because they're wanting whatever for their price. And I have to say it can or can't hit it based on rents today versus market rents versus their rent, all this stuff.
Yeah. We actually just had an issue
mm-hmm.
for a property that's going to close this next week
mm-hmm.
for that exact same thing, where the rents just came in super low, not close to market at all, or what the current landlord is receiving on it. So it's just, of course, and then once that happens, it throws a massive wrench into things.
Yes.
Especially for a buyer.
Yep.
Sometimes it can lead to a termination of a contract because now they're no longer able to finance. I didn't realize they were calling the property managers trying to get fair market rents. And
I know a lot of people's deals right now.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But that can be a good thing too for sellers that are trying, if they are getting those actual information of what rents could be, mm-hmm. they can justify on our side mm-hmm. these prices for properties, right?
So like some of the large multis, what we do as a service actually, and I'm not trying to pitch, I'm just trying to tell you that it exists because it helps solve the problem before it becomes a problem, right? So I have clients that'll come to me and say, okay, I've got a 6-plex, I got a 10-plex, I got a 20-plex, and we want to value it for this, but we can't because the cap's off, right? The cap's not there to support it, so we know it's not going to appraise. So what can I do to get there? Because they need it for their retirement.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll analyze the building and we'll say, yes, you can hit, and here's how, or no, you can't hit, here's why.
Right.
So here, and we'll develop a, think of it like a rental CMA, but more intuitively, to where we create a map that tells them what they can do to prep to get up to that point. So we've got one person over on Boniface that has a beautiful 8-plex. Beautiful. They've had it for like 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And beautiful. Oh my gosh, if everyone knew about it, we would
Long-term
be
hold.
pounding on their door, right? Anyways, over time they haven't given themselves credit on all the work they did with repairs and maintenance, so the rents can definitely come up, and they were so low because of fears that they had that it made them under market to where they couldn't hit their peak. So we made the tweaks, gave them the suggestions of how they could do it, and when they did that, they ended up going, wait, I can cash flow this much?
Yeah, we're not
and pay for you?
Right.
So then they said, never mind, it's not going on the market. I'm just going to hire you to manage it and bring all the rents up and go from there, because now their cash flow time stewed.
Now
Right.
the cash flow makes sense. Like you bring, that definitely makes sense to me.
So, and then there's some where I had to have the hard conversation saying this is a turd and people are going to pay turd prices. So you're going to have to clean the turd and polish the turd, or you're going to have to remodel this turd to be something else.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's what I'm dealing with.
That's a lot of turd.
Yeah. There's some turd talk in there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So as far as real property management goes, do you guys have like a start and stop? What you will manage, what you won't manage?
To a point, we do. So back in the day, for several years, we did a lot of what they call a la carte. The problem is the landlords and the tenants didn't know when to also start and stop.
Oh, right.
So that created a lot of problems. So we do have stuff that we can do where, of course, we have full service management where we do the whole portfolio. We also have asset management where we'll help oversee, counsel their on-site employees or them as a person running it. Then we also have where we help with CMAs, rental planning, consulting kind of work, where we help prep with the sales team to get it through. We even have it where we do consult with buyers, for example, when they are walking into a property and they want to buy it. And we say, okay, we'll walk the property and tell you the strategy that you could play with this to fix whatever it is you're trying to do on your plan. Right. Because the inventory is so little, they have to learn fast to make something work.
Right.
So we do have a lot of that. So it's a lot of consulting that we do. Unfortunately, not, hey, I'll just help you with an eviction, which I'd love to. But landlords and tenants don't know when to start and stop on evictions either. So I had to stop that, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's understandable. I mean, your business has to kind of shift with how things go, right? Seems like, it's always about like adapting, trying things, see if it works. If it doesn't, or if it fits your business model, then start and stop or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you guys get your start? Like, how long has real property management been in business?
Oh, gosh. That's a long story. Just kidding. I can make it in 2 seconds.
Let's go for 2 minutes at least.
2 minutes. Yeah. 2 minutes. I don't know. Let's see. So I started, my grandfather is a owner finance guy. So he went around, bought properties for cash with his bonus money, learned to owner finance it. So from a small age, I learned to go collect rent checks and owner finance checks and stuff like that. And then after we'd done collecting, we'd go work the farm. I'm Mexican, so I that's all I know is repair roofs and collect rent checks things. That was my background. When I turned 18, I got my first rental. I just built up my rental portfolio. I finally said I don't like where I live, so I packed up my bags, moved to Alaska with nothing but my rentals and my savings, started over. Well, here I worked a couple different odds and ends jobs until I got my feet wet in the real estate market and figured out what the market was doing, who was doing what, why was what happening, what's the town doing. And then that's when I said, okay, it's time. I'm just going to go for the management. And so I opened up the rental management to start with my rentals, and I acquired another company, and I came out the door with like 50, 60 rentals out the door. Nice. And then because I'm in a franchise, I have access to technology that no one in this town has, even to this day, which is shocking. So what happened is my first 2 years of business was just trying to survive the massive growth. I went from 60 rentals under management to about 700.
Whoa.
I went all the way up to 700 in just like a 3-year period.
That's explosive.
And then it hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt.
That was a little bit of work, right?
Just a few hours.
Right.
So I sat down and I met with some mentors. So I highly recommend mentors because they are able to shine light because they've already gone through it and walked it. So I had some mentors and they sat down with me and they said, here's what you need to do. It's what they call portfolio corrections, right? So I fired off about 300 accounts right off the door. We had a Christmas party, picked our counts, picked the ones that were low margin, low paying, low hanging fruits and said, here's your new price or fired. So we fired 300-something, 50 units at that time. And I went all the way down to like 400, 300.
She says I went all the way down like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Cut
said
the word.
she said 60, and I'm like, whoa. And then she said 700, and she's like, we just cut it down to 350.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was 50% of the portfolio. It's kind of funny because when you do something crazy like that, everyone in the market's like, oh, they're closing. What are they doing? Because
Yeah.
all the other guys are like, why are you giving me all these accounts?
Yeah.
I'm like, you have fun with them.
Right.
And what happened was all these other guys took my business, old business, and went, yeah, I'm going to take all of this. I'm going to, eat a piece of RPM, right? Well, I ended up being more profitable at 350 than I was at the 750 rentals.
Yeah.
And all of them got real busy and quiet and stopped competing.
Right.
So then I was able to add back up to 500 rentals overnight. So I'm sitting at 500 right now, and I'm still firing some too because I'm like, okay, a couple more we can let go. And I'm sitting at 500 rentals with the most profit I've ever seen as far as management goes.
Right.
And then what's happening is I'm able to focus on my personal rental portfolio and grow that and be able to give back and be able to help the community. When COVID hit, I was first at the legislative door, first with the governor, first with the assembly, trying to tell them, here's where it goes. And that's how the seeds got planted with Alaska Housing being the major funder, and then the community supporters were the arms to help facilitate the workload.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
It probably feels good to kind of help facilitate.
Yeah,
some of that stuff. Yeah.
I don't need my name on millions and millions of relief that went out.
Right.
But knowing that I now have the ability to give back to landlords and give back to tenants and help this town be the town we love to live in,
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
I'm going to jump
yeah,
in first.
okay,
So
go for
just
it.
kind of going back to this number because it's kind of blown me away. So was it like more for your business model, like quantity over quality? Like you would rather have the quality than this mass amount of quantity? So do you feel like when you kind of scaled back to that 350, it was more quality that you could provide and execute that way and then make that growth to 500?
I think the easy way to answer that question is I can have 500 rentals that are rented at 900, or I can have 500 rentals that are rented at 1,400.
Right.
Which one makes more?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like earlier when I was asking you guys the question, if I have a fourplex and I have a duplex, okay? Fourplex is a C property, duplex is a B property, mid-market. Which one at the end of the day, not counting appreciation equity, which can be a factor. If you want me to go into the numbers, I can do that. But just talking at the end of the day, end of the year, which one makes more money?
Well, most of the people are going to say fourplex.
Of course, more units, less risk, spread the risk. When one goes vacant, you still have three paying.
Right.
They all say that. But when you're in a town where the rents are so high, it turnover is literally the most expensive thing ever.
Yeah.
Right? So why sign up for something that has high eviction rate? Why sign up for something that has high turnover rate? Why sign up for something that has a lease renewal rate of only 10 months?
Yeah.
Right.
B properties rent for 3 years at a time, all day long. My renewal rates on my B properties is at 87%.
Oh, wow.
That's
My
definitely
renewal
high.
rate on my C properties, we're sitting at 37%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big
That's
difference.
if they hit the first year.
Right.
Right. Whew. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
50% difference. Just
Yeah. That's
So that's why I'm saying sometimes people want to cost spreadsheet rentals and say, oh, C properties make money all day long. If you're an expert and knowing how to turn fast and do all those stuff like Widener can, for example, with the whole crew, go for it. But if you don't have that expertise, if you don't have that skill set, if you don't have that kind of team that can pull something off like that, which most don't, B actually is the way to go.
right. Yeah, and it makes sense when you break it down like that, just because, you got money here that's a higher rent, and then you have less turnover, like you're going to continually have that higher rent. When you go to a C, you're like, okay, well, I have 4 doors at 900, but I'm changing
Yeah.
less than a year.
And I've heard people say, well, I turn over my properties in one day. Let's just talk about the sales market. When have you heard a seller move out of a property and a buyer move in and it's rent ready within 24 hours?
it's pretty challenging.
It doesn't exist.
Cleaners, paint,
Repairs,
repairs.
the
I mean,
repairs, even
yeah.
if it's a small repair place like a house that just has basic cleaning, basic paint, basic repairs, let's say under $5,000 and we're done on getting it to a buyer, right?
Right.
It's still easy 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Easy.
Right.
I mean, you can push faster if you
Yeah.
line them all up in the middle of summer and cross fingers they're all on time.
Right.
Right.
But they're not on time in summer because everybody wants the work done in summer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, turnover. And it's $50 a day average when a property's vacant.
Right. So, but that conversation just like that reasoning is like, just leads me to believe that most likely it's not the world's greatest unit, and the quality of tenant is also probably not the world's greatest tenant.
Yeah, and she just stated, like, your turnover. So if you're turning over every 10 months and it's a C property, there's going to be a lot more work that goes into it. And so you're, like you said, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before you can even get it back to renting for $900.
And yes, it's possible to screen really, really, really hard to find that tenant, that gym tenant that's going to live in a C property for 20 years. They exist.
Right.
But they're already in a property for 20 years. Why would they move to yours?
Right.
Makes sense.
I need a mic. I need a mic drop here, Mike. That's a bing bong. he doesn't remember. Come on. Just start hitting buttons. But yeah, that
Ding dong.
yeah, that makes
Bing bong.
that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I get it. Everybody wants the C's because they pencil out on paper. I get it. I have some C's in my own personal portfolio. I get it. But I know what I'm doing on how to make a turn, and I know where to make the margin, if that makes sense, because I understand operations. But it's like any business that you start, just like when you were starting the real estate business, right? You sit down and go, if I do this many phone calls, this many leads, this many deals, this many, I'll make this much money.
Right.
And we make these spreadsheets for it. Did any of them ever really pencil out to that number?
Absolutely not.
No.
Because of life,
Right.
Because of operation, because of real world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no, like, on any property, when they have dumpsters, nobody puts it in their dumpster budget to go around and clean around the dumpster every couple of days.
Right.
Because every tenant misses the trash can.
Yeah. Or the couch. Right.
Or the couch that's
no
just
one
sticking
knows
out.
where it came from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, nobody puts it in their budget to do that. And those things eat into a budget so bad.
Right.
Nobody anticipates that. Oh, here's a great one that you guys may not know about. So let's say you're working on a rental unit and we have to pull the toilet. Did you know every time I pull a toilet, I'm supposed to pull a permit?
What?
Really?
Do you know how hard it is to deal with that?
Oh, well, the permitting.
Okay, let's
right
say
now
you
is
got a leak.
Miserable.
Here's another one that's really bad. And this
Yeah.
is something that C properties face more than the other ones, but all of them do face this.
Right.
Let's say you go to a shower and the shower's leaking, and the only way to fix it is to cut the tile between the shower head and the faucet to fix the line that's in the middle, right? The second I'm cutting tile, I need a permit.
That's
It's
mind-boggling.
actively leaking, destroying your subfloor.
Right.
Actively creating potentially mildew, mold, which creates another issue with your tenant.
Right.
The
Which
M-word.
means-
Yeah, woo.
Which means tenant gets a hotel until you're finished.
Right.
So now you got a hotel cost, permit cost, all to fix a little leak in the wall that if you lived there, you could probably fix in a weekend just fine by yourself and just don't post any pictures on Facebook. So the permitting office doesn't come say
Right.
hi, right? But in real world, oh no, we have to go all the way to kosher with the code and the permitting office and waiting in line and
Yep.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that eats up into it. And especially when you get into the lower income, who does almost every one of them gets free legal, they're going to have a heyday with you in the legal world. And
Right.
those legal claims are not covered by insurance. Just
Right.
Yeah.
saying. So I'm not trying to scare people into seeing. What I'm saying
Right,
is meet
it's just-
reality on reality's terms.
Right.
If you want to play and see, go for it. Have a tool together, team together, systems together, and know what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where the most mistakes, and I'm sure you've seen all of this, right? Where you have people who jump into the rental, the landlord world, and don't have any idea of how to manage, calculate. Got into a property that did not cash flow at all, or can remember close.
Here's my favorite story. I'll give my favorite story because I think it shows how far somebody can go with something and before they finally throw in the towel. A local surgeon said, all the other doctors said go buy rentals, and some of the doctors said no, some of the doctors said yes, but they were all referring to like syndicated rentals.
Right.
They weren't referring to, the rental that she bought. So she was out of touch with what the advice was.
Right.
So she went and bought a fourplex that was supposedly rehabbed for above top dollar because she was competing and did like $75,000 over on the price. Anyway, she closed on this fourplex.
My goodness.
And she walks up to the property for the first time, and we're sitting there talking with her, walking with her, and there's needles on the ground.
Oh.
And she's like, oh my gosh, there's needles on the ground, went to grab. And we're like, no, you don't grab those needles. Don't you know what those are? You're a surgeon. Anyways.
Right.
So she was out of touch with that concept. Then finally she went through all the units, didn't like any of the tenants that were placed there. So as they went to month, she kicked them all out. So now I got a fourplex that's empty. And she says, see, now it's got pretty flowers. Now it's got pretty this, and the units are fully clean. Now I can put good tenants in it. Sometimes that strategy can work,
right,
but you got to be fast with it,
right,
because you'll run out of money. So she wanted us to place the rent on these things for like $1,450. These things normally rent for $1,000.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was way out of touch. Plus,
right,
you already know the area just by listening to some of the story, right? And so 6 months later, she calls me up and goes, well, I'm broke. I'm bankrupt. I'm going to go ahead and finish foreclosing on it. I was like, so you didn't place any tenants in it. Basically, the end of the day, she ended up giving this thing back to the bank in under 10 months.
Oh, wow.
Completely ignoring any advice, not letting us take over and manage it, not let us screen and put people in it, all because she was so like scared and out of touch. But what I'm saying is when even somebody who has money did that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can buy a property that's completely out of touch with who you are, your values, your ethics, your personal sphere of what you're aware of. Just because you have money doesn't mean you're buying the property that fits you.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's tons of different kinds of rentals.
There's a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, there is definitely.
Tons.
Yeah. It's, real estate in general is just a massive.
There's so many variations in every aspect of real estate.
100%, man. It's, I don't think people really understand the vastness.
And it's so big that everyone actually has an opportunity to make money at it. Mm-hmm. Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone in this town can do one deal and do very well. Mm-hmm. Everyone.
Yeah.
But you got to, understand business. Mm-hmm. You got to understand 6 months of vacant obviously means no mortgage is getting paid, right? You got to understand that certain areas have needles on the ground that you have to handle.
Right.
You just have to understand, business and business acumen a little bit, or you'll get chewed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so kind of jumping back to the business model. So all this that you've learned is basically through trial and error and your mentors, basically?
So mentors was a huge help for me. I watched a lot of people build up, grow, and fail. My biggest heartbreak moment in the industry was when I met somebody that I thought was a mentor. He owned about 88 units here in town, and he was sitting there going, oh, here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to do. I was just soaking up, learning, taking all the notes. I went to tons of classes. I spent somewhere around $30,000 in just classes 1 year, just 1 year, not talking every year. Just in learning how you can squeeze operations, how you can change the dynamics of screening just to change the whole dynamics of a property.
Right.
And he had 88 units. And then I finally got him to tell me what all the units were so I could do a drive-by to do a bid on helping him with managing it because he wanted to leave it as a legacy for his kids. I caught him outside burning the yard so he didn't have to pay for mowers. And I was like, oh. And he literally took siding off the side of the building so it looked so bad that the city wouldn't appraise it higher on taxes so he could squeeze the taxes. And he spent all the security deposits, 88 units of security deposits. That's a lot of money gone. Then found out he was in bankruptcy on all his mortgages. That's why he was cash flowing so well because he didn't pay any of the mortgages. There's always two ends to the story, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So be careful who your mentors are is kind of my advice there. But that's how I learned through everybody trying to game the system, trying to get to the other side by gaming the system.
Yeah.
And I learned where they tried to skip the system and where it worked, where it didn't, why it did, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, typically trying to game the system doesn't work too well in your favor.
You got to pay those taxes,
Yeah, man.
As much as we don't like to, you probably should pay your taxes. Yeah.
We would like roads to drive on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. They catch on at some point, and then it's a pretty hefty kick in the pants.
Yeah. So mind your P's and Q's, and
Yeah.
And I know I talk a lot about the negative side of the industry, and I only do that because I feel like sometimes you learn through the experiences of the negative.
Exactly.
But there's tons of positive. I know several business owners here in downtown area that buy a whole bunch of properties, and we went through the process of, okay, we're doing a cost segregation on the property. If you don't know what that is, it's where you buy a property and you can take the whole building and depreciate it in 1 year to fix your tax, and you can fix your tax real fast. Then after we did that, then we hit the next year to do a rehab on the place. And then after we finished all the rehabs, we were able to provide really, really good housing to these tenants who actually ended up getting changed over to be tenants for the employees of the business.
Oh, wow.
And so that way they had their start when they moved to town and then would go into another place. So we helped facilitated that whole thing for a business owner to where he could give back more to the employees and give them opportunities for a start. One of the business owners helps with asylums for people that are in other countries needing a place to get started. And we use the rentals to do that. There's tons of amazing stories of how you can take buildings to solve problems, and you can take buildings to protect people and help people and go far.
Yeah, and that's such a cool thing to hear, is because we're not just talking about the benefits of finances. You're talking benefits of other ways, like you said, helping your community and providing for, I mean, sounds like this business owner helped with taxes as well as gave back to his employees, which in turn makes for better employees, builds and expands his business. And
Yeah, he did it as a way because he couldn't get the revenue up on the company to be able to raise rates or payroll for the employees, and he really wanted to keep his staff. So what he did is he started using real estate investing to drop the tax bill, and the tax bill goes back to the employees as their paycheck.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of cool.
That is really cool.
That's just one. Churches do it all the time, by the way. We have some churches in our portfolio where they buy buildings with their fund, and they use the 2 units to help with stories or situations within the church, and the other 2 units to pay the mortgage to keep it afloat, and then they use that, and it helps them. Obviously, they don't really have too much of a tax problem, but they do have an asset problem to be able to grow as a church.
Yeah.
So there's those guys too.
Yeah. That's, one of the things I love about real estate is really the creativity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of building wealth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just, there's just, like we've already talked about, there's just so much you can do in real estate. It's a vast world.
And I think everybody has that like mentality of real estate. All they think about is like financing and numbers. But there's also, like Justin just said, you can have creative ways of doing things that you're not necessarily like chasing that dollar figure. You're just doing good, and then the dollar comes to you.
Like one of my favorite stories of creativityness is I had a person that came to me, and they were talking. They're like, "Oh, Kassandra, I'm never going to have rentals like you. I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to live in retirement, and because I'm short on money because of the divorces that took place and stuff like that." And I said, "You know what? I have some extra time. Come sit down with me. Give me a sheet of all your retirement accounts and what you have." So I took over and looked at everything she has. We have a partnership with Equity Trust, which is a company that helps with 1031s and moving dollars between retirement accounts for rentals. So what I did is I took her accounts, and I took the ones that I could, which was about 4 accounts. I took it and I went and helped her buy 3 duplexes. Those 3 duplexes cash flow much more than where it was, to where now she actually has a shot at being able to retire.
Nice.
And 5 years into owning those duplexes, she got diagnosed with late-stage osteoporosis, so her ability to finish work life to max out the Social Security was no longer a possibility. So she cashed out her other retirement accounts and bought more, and now completely lives on that. And it takes care of her long-term care now. It takes care of her health insurance, so she can at least be comfortable until the end.
Yeah. And, there's obviously tax implications with that, too, because real estate is a great way to reduce tax liability. The IRS code is very much geared to do that. And, versus retirement accounts it's a cool tool, man. It's one of the...
As Tom Wheelwright always says, the tax book is over 1,000+ pages, right? And it says, I'm going to take all your money. But if you read it, it'll tell you how to give all your money back.
Right.
So good luck reading it. Another one was Wall Street did a big article a couple years ago where they took one person's tax, sent it to 50 CPAs, and it came back with 50 different answers.
Yep.
So that's why when people go, well, this person said this and this person said this, it's because it's so big, it's so vast, it's so complex that there's not one answer for everything.
Yeah, and that's just, well, tax code's a whole different topic.
It's the same
'Cause
thing
it's-
with buying and selling rentals,
This
you
is
know?
true,
I mean, it's every building's complex.
Yeah,
You know?
and not every person's tax stuff is the same either, right? And so, really finding that person that's going to understand your business, your, all your income, where you can, put tax liability, reduce it, and then kind of formulate a strategy. And really, what I have found is finding a tax person who helps you formulate a future strategy of not just, hey, I'm just going to do your taxes once a year.
Yeah.
Like someone that can partner with you.
Yeah.
And like, hey, by the way, this changed. We should do this in the future because you're making this much now. We should probably do this.
I mean,
right?
how many buyers came to you and they had one rental and they messed up the taxes on their one rental to where they can't buy?
Yeah.
When they would have just used a pro that can coach them and consult them of how to do the tax write-offs and how to do the depreciation correctly to where they have an opportunity to buy in the next 3 years.
Right.
You mess up those taxes, it's messed up for 3 years.
Right.
Yep.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I sent a friend over to a CPA that specializes in like real estate, and they've been doing TurboTax on there for a while.
It's easy, Justin. You just go to TurboTax.
Yeah, sure. If you have like a single W-2 with nothing else going on, hey man, by all means,
Yeah.
use TurboTax.
Wow.
But
If TurboTax
you
wants
have
to sponsor
anything
the
else-
show,
We got you hooked up.
yeah. If you have anything else going on, I would say probably find a really seasoned professional, right? Especially understands what you're trying to do. If you have a business, if you have rentals, etc. But they took his TurboTax
Oh, I'm so
returns,
worried.
and then they were actually able, because he did not deduct all the stuff you could with rentals, right? And I was explaining a bunch of stuff, and he's like, "Okay, send me your CPA." But they ended up, I think, found $12,000 per year.
Yeah.
And so went through.
That depreciation
Redid.
thing is a big deal.
Yeah, redid his last 3 years, and then he got
And mortgage companies love depreciation because they're not an expense.
Right.
It creates because mortgage companies can back the depreciation back in to show profit for their purposes.
right. Yeah. So he was able to get a, almost $40,000 check from the IRS.
Yeah, I don't think
right?
TurboTax understands cost segregation or depreciation
No.
at all. Yeah.
I don't think there's a button on that website for that.
It's not one of the questions.
Yeah, they don't ask you that.
So, I'm not saying don't use them. Just make sure it's
Understand the tool you're using.
correct. Yes,
It's kind of like rental properties. When you're buying a rental property, understand the one you bought actually fits the goal you're doing because you can misalign that and lose a lot of money.
And I think that's why, like, I was just going to say, everything kind of ties together between your craft and our craft is we get asked all the time, should I buy? Right now, should I buy? Well, what's your goals? Like, what are you looking to do? And it's probably the same thing with you with, should I do this with my rental? Should I do that? And you're like, well, what's your goals? Like, what's it look like on paper? And it's just like a common question that kind of ties it all together. Like, every client's different. Everybody's different. So if you come to me and you're like, I want to buy, I'm like, well, what's your goal? Well, I just want a long-term house. I'm like, okay, then like, let's figure that out. Or the one client comes to you and says, I want to cash flow $2,000 a month. You're like, okay, there's different,
Completely different objectives and goals to that. Like I've got 2 teachers in my portfolio. One teacher said, hey, I want to travel when I hit my retirement. In order to travel when I hit my retirement, I got to learn how to live on this cost of living. So that means I need a property that'll satisfy those. So they ended up getting a duplex, and they rented their house, live in one side of the duplex, manage all of it as a rental to stash away the cash and travel. And they're not selling the house because they may want to go back to it, may not, depending on if they like travel or not. But now, because we set up that strategy for them, they can travel, they have good enough for retirement, and they have a retirement investment to adjust for the because they used it off of the equity trust account with the IRA for that particular deal.
Right.
So if they need to sell it, they have so many options as they travel through retirement, because a lot of people think retirement, you're done, you're sitting at home in front of the TV and you're done. No, retirement's like a whole nother life.
Yeah.
You know, and you
enjoy
gotta have enough savings for another life.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. The other teacher, they went down the path of saying, I want this much per month on the cash flow. So we walked them through, and eventually they went from one property to another property, and we did hops until they finally got to a normal, newer sized 15-plex with the strategy where we could fix that up, because they now by then had a stomach for fix-ups, and they had a stomach for delayed gratification until that 15-plex actually started producing, but they had enough of a down payment to survive the hump.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Well, we're sitting at probably close to an hour here. So in order to wrap up, what are like 5 solid tips that you would love to share with some landlords?
My first one, obviously, be very in tune with your goal. If your goal does not match your property, it does not work. My second goal is learn. Education really is the key to opening the doors when it comes to the real estate market, whether it's buying, selling, rentals, anything in the market, whether it's flipping, whatever. Education is the key to opening all of that.
Yep.
My third tip is, if you are going down the path of the rental world, understand that there's a ton that you don't know, and be humbled by that. So that way you have the hunger to learn and educate around the law, the legal, where to go, where to navigate, and ask for help. And don't be that guy that says, I know everything, and then lose it all.
Right.
My next tip is, vacancy is the most important thing. So be kind to your tenants, love your tenants, set up the property to be good for tenants, because you are now in the business of housing. You are now in the business of pleasing tenants, even if they're wrong.
Yeah.
And my last tip that saves a lot of landlords is screen. Court view no longer shows all the backgrounds anymore. So people who say just do court view, sorry, we had a governor that said they don't post everything there anymore.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So you cannot go to just court view. You now have to do a full-blown 50-state credit, criminal, and eviction background.
Yeah.
And even that may not pull everything. So you have to use software to be a landlord these days. So I recommend get a software or get a property manager. And last, I know it's number 6, but it's the last one. Property managers are actually way more affordable than people realize. We are 24/7. So for most properties, I'm like 10 cents an hour.
Oh, wow. So if you move to Fairbanks, I'll be calling you. Unless you know someone there.
Well, awesome. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Giving us some insight into real property management, obviously your sector and what you guys are seeing right now. And, because we get a lot of questions about that from some of our sellers and buyers.
Yep.
And then, of course, we'll have to have you back on for something else.
I'm getting a notebook for next time. I'm taking notes, and I'm going to have some more questions.
I can drop off a book for you if you want. I wrote a book. You can take it.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
All right. Some more reading material.
This is recorded, so you can always replay it.
That is true. We're on Spotify and iTunes, so.
Yeah. So, well, once again, thank you so much for coming on, Kassandra. It was awesome. Yeah. And, we will see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.